In this video, we're going to go over the full modeling, unwrapping, and texturing process of a breakfast plate. So again, we're just going to make a really simple plate with one piece of toast on it and like 2 eggs. So again, we're going to try to keep this model as simple as possible. So again, first we're going to start off with the plate. So let's zoom out. So before we used 12-sided objects, our plate's going to be kind of big. So let's pop that up to 16 and that should be fine. So 16 by one-sided, hit the escape key and scale this down. And again, I keep hitting A or Shift A so I can kind of zoom in on what I have. I'm not going to worry about beveling the edges and making them super round, but I will make sure that the plate isn't perfectly flat. Because again, if the yolks and the eggs get a little bit runny, we want it to stay on the plate. So we're going to do an extrude. Go to the Mesh Edit tab. And again, the other thing is you commonly use modeling tools are going to be right here. But extrude, right click, switch to the scale tool. And my cursor is not showing up. There we go. So we'll scale this in a little bit, about right there. And then we'll do the same thing for the bottom. Extrude, right click, switch to scale, scale that in. Now we'll take the top and the bottom. We actually want the bottom to be a little bit smaller than the top. And we'll just bring both of these down, and we have our plate. So again, we really don't like those n-gons. Again, it's a single face that has multiple sides that's more than 4. So I'll show you a quick way of turning this into all quads. I can do geometry, polygon, I'll eventually get it, and quadruple. So it just kind of did a little edge slice from here to here, and it just saw this face and intelligently turned it into quads. And we'll do the same thing for the bottom. There we go. So again, that's not something that's always necessary, but when we get into unwrapping, if something is made up like this of all quads, as opposed to a big n-gon, we're probably going to have an easier time unwrapping it. So the other thing, I actually didn't pay attention to size. This is a 1 meter by 1 meter box. So let's pretend that this would be our table. So again, right now this plate is large enough to probably put a turkey on it. So we're just going to want to make this a little bit smaller, something like that. It's a little bit more reasonable. Again, now if we're to throw that 1 meter box in there, our plate's about a foot wide, give or take. So again, at any time, I can take this plate and scale it up or down. Now that our plate's done, we're going to go onto the piece of toast. So with that, I'm just going to start from a box. And the other thing that I'll mention is when you get into texturing, when you've done it for a while, you can pretty much unwrap and texture anything that you want. But when you're still kind of new to it, you want to keep your model as simple as possible. So for our piece of toast, we're not going to make it a box, but it's going to be kind of a modified box. We want to, again, keep this stuff really, really simple because, again, we've already seen how to unwrap a box. We know how to unwrap a box, so I don't want to go in crazy detail and make a super complicated piece of bread because, again, the more complicated the model is, the harder it's going to be to unwrap and the higher chance we're going to accidentally screw something up with the model that's either going to make it impossible to unwrap or really, really hard. Because again, when you're new at modeling, you kind of don't know when you're doing things wrong, so it's just better to keep things really simple. Just go to a top view, and I just want to see like the size of this. That should probably be fine for a piece of toast. And the other thing, if I don't want this plate here, if it's kind of getting in my way, I can just grab just this piece of toast, hit view, and do hide unselected. Oops. There we go. It's not just the piece of toast. So I can grab these 2 edges, do an edge loop. I want to have slice selected turned off. And about right here, this is going to be kind of where the bread kind of pinches in a little bit. Again, it's going to be shaped like that, give or take. So again, this is going to be where that pinches. I'll probably end up having some bevels here and make it just a little bit more round. So what I can do here is just double click this edge, beat a bevel, pull out our blue handle about right there, and I can double click this edge, and then I can just scale it in. something like that. And if I need to make this a little bit wider, I can either use the scale tool or just move those one at a time. So from here, I'm going to bevel these edges and make them round. So B to bevel, pull that out. Again, that's a little bit too faceted, so let's put this roundness level up to 2 for this one. There we go. Then I'll go ahead and bevel this guy and this guy at the same time, so B to bevel. And this one, again, it's a smaller curve, so I probably don't need it to be that round, so we'll put the roundness level of this back to 1. Something like that. And this is pretty much good for the piece of toast. Again, kind of best practices. Now we have an n-gon here because of that bevel that happened. And we also have an n-gon here. So to fix this, we could either use, go ahead and isolate that, use that quadrangulate button, or I could just manually slice this from here to here, hold the shift key, click, here to here. And again, the tool that I'm using is this little guy right here, edge slice. So again, we still have that tool active. Go from here to here, hold shift, click, here to here, shift click, normal left click, shift click. Again, I'm shift clicking whenever I want to start a new cut. And again, this takes a little bit. I want to make sure that these numbers percentages either say 0 or 100. Like that one was 100, this one's 0. Because again, then I know for sure that my cut was made correctly. Because if I do something like this, where it's 98.5, it's really close to this, but it's not quite touching. Now it's touching, it says 100%. Because again, if I was to put it right here, that's just going to turn this and this now into n-gons. We don't want that. So at this point, our toast is done. Now we need to make an egg, and we're going to do this kind of as simple as possible. Yeah, this would work. So we're going to go ahead and grab this. So select 2 polygons, L, we'll loop it all the way around, delete, double click, we'll grab the bottom half. So this is going to be the egg yolk. So let's make that a little bit more flat, and then just, oops, scale the whole thing down. I want to make sure that I'm scaling it on the right axes. So that's probably a good size. Move this over here, move the toast over here. Let's put this guy right down on the plate. Again, Shift A is going to zoom in on what I have selected. So now if I double click this outside edge, again, it's going to, there's nothing on the bottom. I can hit either my Z key or under edge, we have edge extend. So click that, right click in the 3D viewport, hit R to scale, and then just pull this out. This is going to be kind of the white part of my egg. The other thing I'm going to do is just do a little loop slice, bring it down here, and then just scale this in just a little bit and move it down. So what this is doing is making it to where these look like 2 separate pieces. So again, this is going to be the egg yolk, this is going to be the egg white. But again, this little edge right here isn't really needed. So we'll actually just do that in color. The color will separate it for us. But again, from here, now this white area of the egg, normally this is just kind of oblong and weird shaped. So we'll do another edge extend and pull it out. And from here, we'll just grab some edges, just kind of move these around a bit, and make it feel a little bit unique. Again, I can rotate those. That looks pretty good. If there's anything like this that's like too pointy for your liking, what you can do is I can just switch to under mesh edit my edge slice and just click this vert and then just add a little vert right here. hit spacebar or escape to drop the tool, 1 to switch to vertice, select that vertice, W to switch to move, and now you can see this has a better curve to it. So again, I can kind of do this in a couple places to just make this look a little bit more rounded out. Just find those areas where there's points. There we go. This should work just fine for an egg. And the other thing, we don't want it to be like infinitely thin. So let's just do an edge extend, right click, pull down, and then we'll just scale this whole thing up. Now there's just a little bit of thickness for that egg and it should sit on the plate just fine. So U to unhide. So we have an egg. Make sure that's, go to the top view. So within kind of the lip of the plate, have this piece of toast. Just make sure that's in there. So now we can worry about unwrapping this stuff. So after we unwrap it, we can put color on everything. And then after we color it, then we can kind of move stuff around on the plate. So right now we're just worried about, we have the elements that we need for our breakfast. We just need to unwrap them and then color them. So let's go ahead and jump to that UV tab. And see, I started with primitive shapes, so they start with an unwrap. And this can sometimes be a little bit confusing. If it's not over here, again, just open up. I'm on this main menu. Normally you're on the Properties tab. Go to the Lists tab, open up UV maps, and just make sure that little guy called Texture is selected. Now these, I'm not going to use these, but I don't want to delete them. If I select all this stuff and hit delete, it deletes all my polygons too. So we'll just undo that. The other thing I'm going to do real quick, just to get in the habit of, so I'm just going to save this as breakfast. No, let's be a little more descriptive. Breakfast plate. So from here, again, I can't delete this, but I really don't want it in my 1 or 0 to 1 space. So let's just scale this down, move it up here out of the way. Because again, this stuff is already, it has an unwrap, but it's not anything we can use. I mean, I don't see an egg or a piece of toast here or a plate or anything. So we just need to manually cut all this up. So let's do it one piece at a time. And the way that I recommend doing this is, go ahead and name this real quick, is just look at these elements one piece at a time. So again, grab the polygons, hide unselected. Now we're going to just unwrap the plate. So what I'm going to do to unwrap this plate is, realistically it's really flat. So normally when you unwrap a cylinder, you would grab the top loop of polygons, grab the bottom loop of polygons, and grab kind of the edge loop, unwrap. So then you would get the top of the plate, the bottom of the plate, and this little really thin edge. But this little edge is so thin, and it's going to kind of be one color, that how I'm going to do this is just double click this bottom edge, unwrap, right click, and I'm going to call this good. So real quick, let's do that one more time. Double click the bottom edge, left click unwrap. Looking at my settings right now, I'm currently set to angle base iterations. As long as it's over 100, it's okay. I just defaulted to 400. These settings, realistically, they wouldn't change anything. You can see that this is diagonally flipping back and forth, but it's not drastically changing anything, so we don't need to worry about these right now. And again, at these buttons right here, you don't need to fully understand what they're doing. Just know that if you click them, you'll get different results. So that's something you can kind of click through those. Try the U, try the V, try these 3 options. So again, you have a total of 6 different options. But again, this right here for a plate unwrap is just fine. So let's move on to the piece of toast. I'm going to hit the U key to unhide. We'll grab the toast. So with this one, we could kind of think of this like a cylinder. It has a flat top and a flat bottom, kind of like the plate. So let's just double click, and you'll see that it actually goes to here and then stops. Because again, there's kind of a weird scenario where there's 1, 2, 3 edges right here. Everywhere else there's 4 edges. So let's just go over here, double click, and then we'll just manually grab the rest of this. So let's try this unwrap, see what happens. So again, it's going to kind of stretch around right here, and we'll throw a checker pattern on here and kind of see what it looks like. So again, this is just a different way of doing it. In the videos I showed grabbing one from your desktop and dropping it on the image. But Moto kind of has a built-in one if you have a newer version of Moto. So if I just hit this little button right here, it's a little checker pattern, hit enable, and then that should put one on potentially. But if it doesn't, enable's checked, you hit UV textures, and then there's a bunch of different checker patterns that go in here. So I usually do this small .png one. Now we can kind of see what's going on. So again, right here, like I said, there's a little bit of stretching right there. It's not really a big deal. So let's reselect. Let's actually turn that off so we can see our model a little bit better. Let's reselect those edges by hitting select UV border. Let's actually just put a little cut right there and a little cut right there. And again, we're not sure. We didn't really look to see what the stretching was happening right there was. But unwrap, right click, spacebar to drop that tool. Now you can see that this is like the bottom part of the crust folded down. This has a little bit more of a curve to it, so it can probably handle it a little better. So now we have a little seam right here where it cut it. So again, there's kind of a pixel here, and then kind of a half pixel here, and then like a quarter of a little pixel right here. So again, seams usually aren't the most desirable thing, but again, unwrapping something is kind of a tug of war between having a lot of seams and having a lot of stretching, so you got to kind of pick your battles. So let's look at this, and again, there's a little stretching here. So again, we got littler squares here and bigger squares here, but the difference between these is really, really minimal. So I'm just going to call this good for a toast unwrap. Let's turn this off and hit U. And the other thing about this is it's not actually adding any images before we had a material in here and added an image to it. This is just kind of like a stand-in image, so it's not actually affecting your file in any way. So we have the plate, we have the toast and the plate, they're sitting right on top of each other. So again, I want to grab this island and this island, but to grab both, I can either select them over here or just double click my toast over here, and it'll grab both islands. Same thing with the plate, grab these, move them down. So kind of what I usually do is I will have kind of working stuff over here on the left side and finished stuff over here on the right side. So let's put this over here. This is the finished side. And then as you hit unwrap, everything kind of gets packed right in here. So this is my working area. So again, not unwrapped, working area, completed unwrap. And then again, this stuff I still have to pack in here. So let's look at this egg real quick. And this guy is really, really flat. So I think I'm just going to unwrap it with all the polygons selected. So left click, hover over the 3D viewport, right click, and that just flattened this egg. So you can think of what this just did was it just went boop and it flattened it out. So again, something like that is easy to flatten, but something like a piece of toast, it kind of has a little bit of structure to it. So you got to cut it up more. So let's unhide and let's, oops, not texture, turn this on. So now we can see we got kind of big checker patterns here, smaller ones here, and then a medium size right here. So we just need to pack this. Let's try an auto pack, hit OK. And the plate's really big, and the toast and the eggs are really small. And I know that's kind of how it is, but let's manually do this. So that kind of got us started. So what I'm going to do is grab this, rotate it, and again, if you get something that's at a weird angle, you can always hit orient pieces and they'll go one way or another, or you can hit pack. And I can actually, this direction, I could change this to horizontal, vertical, or whatever. So let's change it to horizontal, hit OK. And again, there's a curve in here, so it's really not understanding that I want this straight up and down. So I guess I'll show you just a new button to do this. You have these little rotate buttons right here. So I'm just going to select an edge that's I know straight and hit this little rotate to the right so it makes it flat. Click, and it just makes this edge that I've selected perfectly horizontal. So we'll do the same thing with this. We can make this guy flat and then just hold Control, rotate it 180 degrees, or negative 180, doesn't really matter. And then Escape key to drop that tool, switch to move, and move this piece of toast over here. So we're kind of going to have a little bit of wasted space just because of how these pieces are. Let's actually see if we can't tuck the egg in right here. Put this toast here, this toast here. And again, we don't want to get too close to the other pieces. And actually what I'm going to do is just scale up these two pieces of toast just a little bit, just so they get a few more pixels of texture space. So now this is going to be our texture or our color map that we're going to make inside of Photoshop. This is going to be the bottom of the toast. This is going to be the top of the toast with the crust on it. And this right here is going to be the egg. Then we have looks like the top of the plate and the bottom of the plate. So if I didn't like this, I could kind of switch these around. Say I wanted this one over here because the top of the plate is on kind of the top of the texture. And I could do the same thing with the toast if I wanted to. But it doesn't really matter. It can really go anyway. And this, I mean, this toast could even technically be rotated, in any direction. It really doesn't matter. I just like to have things upright. But again, sometimes just doesn't work out. So from here, our model's good. We just need to adjust where the pieces of toast are, and then the eggs, and then our unwrap is good. So let's go ahead and do a save real quick. File, save, just in case Moto crashes or something, we don't lose any of our. So again, just to be more clear on this aspect of it, this is kind of what my texture is how my texture is going to be laid out. So I'm going to have a little white piece of toast here, a little white piece of toast here, a plate, and a little white egg with a yellow dot on it. So I don't technically know. I mean, I know that my texture image is going to be square. We'll probably do 1024 by 1024 pixels. But I don't really know where this dot is. So I'm going to save out an EPS file. And it's not my actual UV unwrap, it's just a reference image. You can think of it like me taking a screenshot of this. And I'm going to use that just as like a frame of reference for where those pieces need to be in the texture, but I don't actually need to leave those in the texture. So we're going to do that. I have my texture selected. I know that because it's over here and showing up. So we'll do texture, export UV to EPS. We'll just save this on the desktop. We'll actually name this plate underscore UVs and hit save. In these settings, we can just set this to the default. It's completely fine. Now let's jump into Photoshop. So inside of Photoshop, I really don't have a document open yet, but I have my plate uv.eps. And this right here is a really important step that a lot of people miss for some reason. So they'll just hit OK from this. But realistically, you can't have an 8,533 pixel by 8,533 pixel texture. That is realistically a really, really huge texture, and it's going to make Moto run slow, and it's an obnoxiously large image. So we're going to switch this to 1024 by 1024, and then just make sure that this says RGB for color, not CMYK, and then we'll hit OK. So now if I zoom in on this, I get a little frame of reference for where all those things are. So this isn't my actual unwrap. I really can't send this back to Moto in any way. It's literally just a little collection of pixels. Oop, we have a very large brush. It's a little collection of pixels saying where our unwrap is. So there's an edge right here in our unwrap. So let's go ahead and start texturing this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to name this. I'll just name it UVs. And I actually want to have that layer on the top. In this one, I'll just make this a background color. We'll fill this in like a really light blue. And now we can see our UVs a little bit better. So from here, I'll make a new one and call this plate. So again, this is the plate top right here, and this is the plate bottom. This is the top of the toast. This is the bottom of the toast. That's the egg. Again, kind of simple layout. We don't have a lot of things in the file. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and color the plate. So to do this, oh no, so it looks like we actually have a little bit of overlap on our UVs. So this isn't a problem at all. Let's just fix that real quick. So I'm going to delete this UV layer. I'm going to go back to Moto. I'm going to zoom in on my egg, and I can see that overlap. You can see I was just a tiny bit of red, so it was really easy to miss. I'm going to grab this UV island. I'm just going to move it right here. So I need to re-export out that EPS file. We'll just save over top of this one. There we go. So same, that's just one of those common things you should really check for. But again, it's good to have in the video because it's just showing some troubleshooting. Jump back over to Photoshop, grab that EPS file again. We want, again, 1024 by 1024. And again, that's a power of 2. We'll explain why that's important later, but this is just a really common texture size. Now this image, I can just left click and drag, go over here, hold shift, and now it's placed right where it needs to be. Again, if you're kind of unsure on that, I would just restart from this one and maybe drag this background layer into here, because again, this guy, if this moves to the left or the right one, it's going to be really bad because your UV islands aren't going to line up. So let's just rename this UVs. Make a new texture called plate. So now to select this, what I'm going to do is I can just grab kind of the circle marquee tool, make it a little bit bigger than I need to, and then just make sure that the whole plate is kind of encompassed with this. And again, if I need to fine tune this, I can use my arrow keys. Somewhere in there. Oops. Let's just reselect this. Should just come from the center. There we go, that works just fine. And say in this plate, we'll actually have it kind of a gray brown cream color. And again, I just want to make sure that how I filled this in, all of my boundaries are covered, which it looks like they are. So the other thing, technically, if I wanted to, I could just use a big brush and just be really careful when I color this in. Again, when I'm not close to something else, I can kind of go wherever I want and just do something like that real quick, and then fill in the middle. I just want to make sure that I'm not sloppy like this and I fully fill in everything. So from here we need a toast color. Let's actually make new layer. And actually the toast color is going to be pretty close to this, so maybe we'll change the plate color up a little bit. So we're just going to let's do a rectangular marquee. Fill that in. Fill that in. So now those two are the same color. Again, we're just getting kind of our base colors down. We can change things later. Egg white. Switch to the lasso tool. And I don't want 100% white. We'll just do like a little off-white and fill that. And then egg yolk. Let's grab a little yellow color. A bit warmer than that. There we go. And this one, I'll just try to make my brush size about the same size as this. And there we go. So again, if I turn this off, I just need to make sure that this is round. If I'm going over the bounds a little bit, it's gonna be just fine. So the other thing, I'm gonna want my edges of my toast just a tiny bit darker. Because again, that's kind of the heel of the bread. It's always a little bit darker, so we get a little bit darker brown for that. Let's just put this on a new layer, call it toast crust. And this one I'm just going to manually fill in. Oops, so I was trying to paint, but I actually had this selection set up here. So Control D to deselect that, and now we can paint. So here I'm going to click and hold Shift, and it's okay for this one if I go over the edge a little bit. I actually want to go over the edge a little bit. I just want to make sure that I get all this edge filled in, because again, this edge is going to connect back over to this edge. So let's get this outside border really quick, and then we'll do the fine detail on the inside. And again, you can spend as much time as you want painting on these. Again, you can have photorealistic toast if you want to spend that much time on it. We're just going to keep these pretty simple at first. So again, I want to just go over the edge of the piece of toast. Something like that. And again, this is usually the texturing portion. It can be a little bit time consuming. Let's go ahead and erase that. So again, I put these on separate layers, the crust and the main part of the bread. So if I accidentally go over a little bit too much, I can just erase that. Again, if you'd rather just kind of switch back and forth between colors or color pick, you can kind of paint however you want. So we're almost done here. There we go. So now in this one, I'm actually going to utilize these UVs to help me out. I'm actually going to switch to this UV layer, hit W or go to my magic wand tool and click. Actually, let's click here. So what this is going to do is it's going to kind of give me the selection by this toast. Now I can grab, so technically, so you know what I have selected, I have this portion right here. Let's change colors real quick. Something a little more gnarly. This is my selection. So if I grow this selection, it'll go in a little bit on the bread. So select, modify, expand. Oh, 1, 2, 3 pixels. Let's do 4 pixels. Switch colors. Do a color fill. Actually, I don't want to do a color fill on this UV layer. That would have been bad. We'll put it on the toast crust layer. There we go. So now this one is technically a little bit more uniform than this one, but I could go in and either erase parts of it so it doesn't look as perfect, or I could even just leave it as is. Again, this is going to be the bottom of the toast. It's not super important. Again, just holding the shift key after I do a stroke so I get a straight line. Again, doing a combination of straight lines and a little bit of rough stuff, just so it's kind of a good mix. So the other thing, I'm really not keen on the plate being so close to the color of the toast. So let's hue shift this. Saturate it a little bit more. Oh, let's take it into a light blue area. something like that. Technically, if we wanted to, this is the top of the plate, we could do some designs on here. So again, I'm not going to get too crazy on this. So let's actually set this to path. Oh. What we're going to do is use this, set it to path. Oh, about right here. Get a little bit bigger. Actually, let's make our brush a little bit smaller. Let's do like 8 pixels. Switch to the pen. Change our color to, let's just do a darker blue. Right click and hit stroke path. The brush should be fine. Now I can go in and I can delete this path. I can just make sure that this is kind of centered. Again, this is just going to be a little liner on the plate. If it's not big enough, I can just increase it a little bit. But again, I want to make sure that it's kind of centered. And then, so it's not so crazy, we'll just drop the opacity a little bit. There we go. So let's turn our UVs off and look at what we have going for the toast. Let's do 2 more things. For this toast color right here, I'm just going to do filter, noise, add noise. This is just to make it look a little bit more textured. Do a light blur on it. Something like that, just to give it a little bit of texture. And again, I could use the burn tool and make little marks in it and stuff, but we'll kind of leave it as is. And then the egg yolk, let's just do yolk highlight. So we're going to switch to a brush, have it be a little bit softer of a brush, switch to white, pen pressure is on, and we'll just do just a little swipe just to make it look a little bit round. I mean, if we wanted to, we could come in here and texture it a little bit more. So do something like that. And then, actually, let's do that on its own layer. And we'll use the egg yolk. Invert that layer and delete it. It has a little bit of depth to it. But again, we could do the same thing with the plate and stuff, but we'll leave this fairly simple. So we'll call this good for a texture. The other thing is I really want to make sure that I turn this layer off. Then I'll do a file, save as. So we'll just call this breakfast_plate. And we'll leave this as a Photoshop file. Hit save. And then we'll do file, save as. And we'll save it as a PNG. So the PSD I'll want to keep in case I want to come in and modify some of these layers or do anything. But for the PSD, for the PNG, I'll use that to apply it to Moto. So let's jump back into Moto. This little guy we can turn off. We don't have a material yet. I'm on the shading tree, so we're going to want to do that first. We'll select all of our polygons. M for material. We'll just call this breakfast plate like everything else. It doesn't matter what color it is because when we put a texture on here, it's actually going to override this color. Open up that folder. We have breakfast plate. Breakfast plate.png right here. So I'm just going to take this and drag it in between breakfast plate and material right here. Close that, and this is the result. So now we can worry about organizing these on the plate. Again, if I wanted, I could put a little square of butter, maybe put the UVs for it right here, do some other stuff. There's quite a bit of room left on here. But what I'm going to do is just start organizing this. Let's put one piece of toast here. And now I'm actually going to copy and paste this piece of toast. So copy, paste. And you'll see it keeps the same UV unwrap. And over here it's just dark, so these are overlapping each other. So I can kind of get unlimited pieces of toast for this one texture. It's kind of cool. But again, you just want to do that kind of after the fact, just so you know everything's going to work out. So let's kind of get this oriented a little bit better. There we go. They're kind of sitting on top of each other. Then the eggs, I can put one here, copy, paste. Kind of flip this one the other way. And again, I can kind of rotate these however I need to make sure that they fit. If I need to, I can shrink those down just a little bit. Something like that. So, turn the wireframe off. So now we kind of have a little breakfast plate going. So if I wanted to, I could jump over to the render tab, hit my render preview, and come in and look at this. The only thing that we wouldn't be able to do at this point, I'm actually in the directional light, jump into perspective, you can see that camera looking right at it. The only thing I can't do is, right now, all of these breakfast items are sharing one material, so if I made one of these items really shiny, everything else is going to be really shiny too. So just to display that, specular amount 50%. Now everything is really shiny and a little bit reflective. So normally if you have kind of cartoony textures like this, it's always good to take your specular amount down to 0, take this Fresnel amount down to 0. The Fresnel sometimes you can leave, it's kind of personal preference. And then the roughness, usually having a higher amount on that is pretty good. But from here, this breakfast platter is pretty much done. I can definitely go in and make sure that these eggs aren't floating though. You can see right where it goes through, something about right there. W to move, bring that down, and again we don't want to go too far down because then it sinks into the plate. And something like that. And there, now they're not floating anymore. And something like this for this assignment is going to be perfectly good. So if you want, you can make a render sheet for this, kind of like we did the chessboard. But other than that, just a screenshot of it's fine. The other thing that I'd ask you to do is do a file save as and save out an FBX file for me, and then make sure that you upload your textures as a PSD, the Photoshop file, and then a PNG, the flattened texture image.